Hey guys, welcome to Skeleton Guy Stories. Tonight's tale will make you question those strange sounds you hear in the dark. When a lonely street cat appears near your window, it might not be what it seems. Some creatures can wear the skins of ordinary animals, but there's always something not quite right about them. So lock your windows, recite your prayers, and enjoy the story of why you should never trust a cat that walks on two legs. I need to share something with you. Before I do, let me be clear. I'm a Muslim, and in my faith, we believe in jinn, beings made of smokeless fire. They exist on a plane beyond human perception, living unseen in our world. Some are benevolent, while others are malevolent, feeding off fear and filth, drawn to places with negative energy. These malevolent jinn can attach themselves to people or animals, possessing and tormenting them. When jinn materialize in our dimension, they can't do it perfectly. Allah has placed limitations on them. Every time a jinn takes on another form, something is always wrong. A foot twisted backward, an extra finger, a face that seems familiar but not quite right. There's always a flaw, something that doesn't belong. I never thought I'd experience it myself. I dismissed it as folklore, stories we tell to frighten each other, until it happened to me. What I experienced wasn't just terrifying, it was deeply traumatic. It was late, around 2 a.m. I was in bed scrolling through my phone, attempting to fall asleep after a long day. My room is on the first floor of our 3-story house, facing the front yard. The night was quiet, almost too quiet. The stillness felt unnatural, as if the world was holding its breath. Then I heard it. At first, I thought it was a cat yowling. Nothing unusual in my neighborhood, where strays often fought or mated. But this sound was different. It wasn't just a cat in heat. The noise was raw and desperate, the kind that makes your blood run cold from its sheer intensity. The sound echoed through the night, tearing at the stillness. It seemed to come from right outside my window. More annoyed than frightened, I got up and went to the window to investigate. Nothing. The street was empty, bathed in the dim glow of a single street lamp. No cat. No sound, just the quiet, empty night. Irritated at being disturbed for nothing, I returned to bed, trying to ignore the uneasiness settling in my chest. The house fell silent again, with only the distant chirping of crickets and cicadas creating a natural white noise. I grabbed my phone and tried to focus on the screen, hoping sleep would finally come. But then it came again. Louder this time, closer, that same blood-curdling yowl. My patience wearing thin, I groaned and returned to the window. Still nothing visible in the yard. The street lamp cast long shadows, distorting shapes into dark, slender figures. It was unsettling, but I knew it was just a trick of the light. There was no cat to be seen. Determined to find the source of the noise, I stayed by the window longer, scanning the darkness. Nothing appeared. The sound had vanished as mysteriously as it had begun. I felt increasingly unsettled. Though the sound was gone, it seemed to linger in the air, echoing in my ears. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, but I forced myself to dismiss it. I turned off my phone, lay back down, and closed my eyes, willing sleep to come. Just as I was drifting off, I heard it again. Louder, more urgent, but different this time. The yowling no longer sounded like a cat. It sounded like something trying to imitate a cat and failing. Worse, it sounded as if it were coming from inside my room. I bolted upright, heart racing. How could anything be inside my room? I'd locked the door and windows, yet the sound was unmistakable, surrounding me in the darkness. With trembling hands, I flicked on the light switch. The moment light flooded the room, the sound stopped. The sudden silence was jarring. No breeze, no crickets, nothing. It reminded me of how forest creatures go silent when a predator approaches. The silence felt wrong, as if I were being watched by something I couldn't see. My pulse hammered in my ears as I stood frozen, unable to move. I stared into the empty room. Nothing visible, no cat, no source for the yowling, just silence. I began to wonder if I was losing my mind. I left the light on for the rest of the night, too afraid to be in darkness again. I stood there, scanning every corner of my room while simultaneously watching out the window. The only sound was my heart pounding in my chest. Every second stretched into eternity, the air thick with dread, as though something was watching, waiting. 20 minutes passed, 30, 40. I lost count, but nothing happened. I began to convince myself it had been nothing, just a trick of my tired mind. With the light still on, I finally returned to bed, exhaustion overtaking me. I closed my eyes, willing myself to sleep, and I did, but not for long. I found myself in a nightmare that felt like a distorted memory. I was running down my street, but everything was wrong. The trees bent at impossible angles. Shadows stretched too long. The sky pulsated with an unnatural rhythm. I was running from something, though I couldn't see what. I could feel it though, the weight of it, the pure malevolence emanating from whatever pursued me. Unable to resist, I glanced over my shoulder, and there it was, an entity of impossible size, darker than the absence of light. Its form shifted and morphed like shadows dancing in fire. Its eyes glowed a deep crimson, and I felt cold dread wash over me as it moved closer, its footfalls shaking the ground beneath me. I ran faster, but it gained on me. I felt its breath on the back of my neck. It chuckled, a low, guttural laugh that echoed through the air. Then everything went dark. As my eyes adjusted, I saw it right in front of me. The entity lunged, and I raised my arms to shield myself. I jolted awake, heart racing as my alarm blared. Early dawn light filtered into the room, bringing with it the familiar sounds of the house. But something was wrong. The light I'd left on was now off. Worse, my window, the one I was certain I'd locked, was slightly ajar, as if someone had opened it and hastily tried to close it. I froze, unable to explain it. My heart pounded as I hurried to the window, closing and locking it tight. But the feeling of being watched never left. The day passed in a haze. I couldn't focus at work, distracted by the vivid images from my nightmare. I remembered every detail of that dark entity, too clearly for a mere dream. When I pulled into my driveway that evening, I saw it. A black cat darted across the yard at unnatural speed. I stopped and got out of the car, curious. Something about the cat felt connected to the previous night's events. I looked around, but the cat had vanished. Yet the feeling of being watched remained, stronger than ever. I went inside and tried to distract myself with video games, but dread gnawed at me. It felt as if something waited just out of sight, stalking me. I went to bed early that night, hoping for the rest I'd missed. But as I neared sleep, I heard it again, the cursed yowling. Distant at first, then louder, closer. I wanted to believe it was just a stray, but deep down, I knew it was something else entirely. Despite the yowling, I somehow fell asleep, only to awaken to a sense of dread unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, paralyzed as if something pressed down on me. Panic rose in my chest as I struggled against the invisible weight. Realizing I was experiencing sleep paralysis, I began reciting Ayatul Kursi in my mind, a prayer in Islam that offers protection against malicious entities. As I recited, I slowly regained control of my body. I managed to turn my head toward the window. There it was, the black cat from my driveway, sitting on the windowsill. The window was once again slightly open. Its eyes glowed with the same crimson light from my nightmare. Its yowling became a full screech. But something was terribly wrong. This was no ordinary cat. Its limbs bent at impossible angles, and its eyes held an intelligence that no animal should possess. As I watched, frozen in terror, its body began to contort and morph. Its legs twisted and bent backward, bones cracking and rearranging in ways no living creature could survive. The sight made me sick, my skin crawling. I wanted to scream but still couldn't fully move. Then the cat did something impossible. It stood on its bent hind legs and smiled at me, a human expression on a feline face, its features twisting into something demonic. My heart seemed to stop. I couldn't breathe. It moved closer, its twisted limbs jerking with unnatural motion. When it was only a few feet away, it dropped to all fours and began to transform. Its body stretched, fur dissipating into darkness. The feline form vanished, replaced by a pulsating mass of black energy, constantly shifting shape. Then I heard it speak. The voice was deep, guttural, ancient. It whispered in a strange dialect somewhere between Urdu and the language I'd never heard, yet somehow understood. The words crawled into my mind, filling me with revulsion. By this time, I had finished reciting Ayatul Kursi and was regaining control of my limbs. As I prepared to move, the creature looked at me, its demonic grin transforming into pure rage. It let out a blood-curdling shriek, jumped through the window, and twisted into the night, disappearing into shadows after one final hateful glance. I lay motionless, paralyzed by terror. Had it really happened? Was I safe? Would it return? These questions haunted me long after my encounter. I couldn't sleep that night or the next. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt that presence lurking just beyond my perception, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Days stretched into weeks, weeks into months. The strange cat never reappeared, but I knew it was still out there, watching, waiting for me at my most vulnerable. I realized that during that period of my life, I was at a low point. I wasn't practicing my faith and often engaged in activities that Islam prohibits: smoking, drinking, illicit relationships, living in an unclean home. All things that malevolent jinn are attracted to. In the days that followed, life seemed normal, almost suspiciously so. But whenever I passed a reflective surface, shadows flickered at the edge of my vision. Whenever I closed my eyes in darkness, I felt unseen eyes watching me. The terror never truly left. It became a part of me, a constant companion. And sometimes, in the dead of night, I still hear it, the faintest, most chilling yowl in the distance. Closer, always closer, never truly leaving, the unseen, with its beady red eyes, watching and waiting for me to make a mistake. I've since returned to my faith, keeping my home clean and my life pure. I recite Ayatul Kursi before sleep every night. It seems to keep the entity at bay, but I know it's still there, patient, ancient, and hungry for my soul. Remember this: if you ever hear strange sounds in the night, if animals behave oddly around you, if you feel watched when alone, be careful. The unseen world is closer than you think, and not everything that walks on four legs is what it appears to be. This is it, guys. Hope you liked the story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a new nightmare. Good luck.